we are asking them to lie to us. So this is a conversation about Agile estimation. Sheriane is new at Berteig and is being onboarded as an Agile coach and consultant. And this is just an opportunity to talk about this important topic, which many people and organizations struggle with. I do have a bit of an agenda, which I will go through, but Sheriane, the idea is that anytime you have questions to, jump in and ask them. And basically, we'll just go through some of the core principles of Agile estimation. That's what I'd really like to focus on. The idea is really simple, actually, that many organizations want to be able to predict the future for sometimes very valid reasons, right? They want to understand what's ahead of them in terms of both their internal capacities, the things that they're going to deliver, and they need that sometimes in order to be able to work effectively with the outside world, their clients, their customers, their vendors, their partners, and the marketplace in general. Of course, everyone accepts that there's certain things they can't predict. You often can't predict what your competitors are going to do, for example. But there are also a lot of things internally that we try to predict that aren't necessarily that easy to do so. So the principles of Agile estimation really are kind of, I would say, designed to take that into account. So what are those principles? Well, I'll share my screen for just a moment. So there's three principles that I want to talk about. They're super simple to write down, but they do take a little bit of a description to understand. So first one is that Agile estimation is really meant to be fast. It's not accurate. And the reason for that is really simple, because estimates do not provide value. So, what is the value of estimation? Well, often the value of estimation is psychological. It makes us feel better, but in fact, often there isn't any customer value. So this is a really important point. Your customers don't care about your estimates. There is no customer value. They care about the results that you're delivering, and of course, that those results are coming in a timely fashion. They therefore, in a real world situation, you want to find ways to minimize the amount of time you spend on estimation. Yes, we still want to do it, but we want to minimize the amount of time. So, this is kind of the first way that we can think practically about how do we do estimation. Well, we want to make sure that whatever techniques we're using, however we're coordinating our estimation efforts, however we're recording them, and however we're using those estimates, that it's compressed in time, that we do it very quickly. Any thoughts or questions about that, Sheriane?
I'm actually just reading over my notes of what you said. I type as you talk so I can read it over. Do not forget value. A tangible example of that, although I think I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
I've been in these environments before.
So I was actually going to turn that around and ask you, what are some situations where you've made an estimate and then it's been wrong?
Okay, so I'm just going to pull from my previous example. Obviously, this is way before I came to work for you. Everybody thought everybody would go back to any of the banks like 2021. That's not even close.
Right.
They're talking about possibly 2022. I'm like, sure you are, but
no. Yeah, the whole COVID thing and how long it's lasted and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Great example. Now, that's a big, externally uncontrollable sort of thing that causes even our workplace estimates for the projects or tasks that we're doing to be very different from what was expected. Certainly, all those people who care about facilities are going, oh man, when are we going to be ready? And then the people who make plans to use facilities, conferences, meetings, and stuff like that, all of those plans for when we come back to doing that have turned out to be unreliable.
Absolutely.
So great example. I mean, in work environments, mostly when we're talking about agile methods, we're looking at things that are not just externally uncontrolled, but even when they're internally, there's complexity involved. So, my background is software development. It's very hard to estimate the amount of time even seemingly simple tasks will take. Fixing certain types of defects. Yeah, some are really easy. Oh, there's a typo. Okay, we just fixed that. But there's others where it takes a lot of time and effort to even understand where the defect is occurring in the system, let alone actually then figuring out how to fix it. This applies in any kind of creative endeavor. Yes, people can and should work to deadlines in creative professional work, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get exactly what you expect or need, because there's a certain je ne sais quoi as part of the creative process. So these are some examples of where we can make estimates, or for that matter, set deadlines, but we don't necessarily get what we expect, or the estimates turn out to be wrong, one or the other. And for what it's worth, in most work environments, again, the customer doesn't really care about your timelines other than that it satisfies their timeline, which is going to be different for different customers. Not only that, if you come in early and deliver value before the timeline, so in other words, your estimates are lower than expected, or sorry, your actuals are lower than you're expected, then actually usually the customer is really thrilled. Now, there's always exceptions. There are situations where, for example, seasonality, or, like in space travel, the alignment of the planets. I mean, there's certain things where we have deadlines that are truly and absolutely outside of our control that we must meet. And so agile estimation techniques might not be applicable in those situations because, again, we're not trying for accuracy. We're trying to minimize the amount of time that we spend estimating, get some estimates out there fast to satisfy our psychological needs for estimates and some basic planning needs around estimates, but we're not worried about it being perfect. Okay, so that's the first principle. I don't know, any other thoughts or questions about that one, Sheriane?
Oh yeah, I think like there's actually a couple of actual like real life examples I've had of that before. And I think there is something to be said about the creative process. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, please. So like basically, and I see what you're saying with the whole psychological satisfaction, because truthfully, when you go to any organization, they say like, oh, can you give me like a possible like end date? People like to hear that. Does that mean it's gonna happen? Maybe. But I see what you mean. Like, I think it's like a human thing, and people want that. But I've definitely seen, like, this is just an example. When I was with the bank, they had this big project for like Amazon, some sort of partnership. It was like for a credit card. On the day of the launch, something went wrong, and that just pushes back a whole day. Now we don't even know when it's due, because you think it's going to launch that day. It's not launching that day.
Yeah.
And that's a creative thing. So I can definitely see what you mean by like, sometimes you have to go back and fix things and defects, because you could tell them like, oh, it'll take me a day. Does that actually mean it's going to take a day? Maybe. I mean, I hope, but it
Yeah,
probably won't.
yeah.
So
And
I do have a question though.
sure, sure, yeah.
I'm not saying that estimation is a waste of time, but is the I'm going to say like the emphasis is not so much there when it comes to agile estimation is kind of the long short of it,
Yeah,
because it's just for like it. I hate to say it, but it's kind of estimation is kind of just for you.
right.
It doesn't actually benefit the project too much, or the
Yeah.
product or the process or whatever's going on. Okay, that sounds about
Yeah,
right.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's this question about like, you know, a lot of organizations want long-term detailed plans for how something is going to happen. And the essence of being agile is to sort of embrace the idea that that's actually impossible, that we can make, we can set goals, absolutely, and we should set goals. But in terms of reaching those goals, anytime we're involved in complex, creative type of work, we just have to embrace the idea that we get there gradually. We take small steps. We inspect. In Scrum's phraseology, we inspect and adapt, and that is something that humans do naturally anyway. But often in businesses, we want more rigor, even when that rigor isn't possible. So,
Mm,
so that leads to some other psychological things, right? Like, so people want estimates and plans for psychological reasons, for comfort,
mm,
but it comes at the expense of the psychological safety of those who are making the estimates. And that actually leads quite nicely to the second principle of agile estimation. So I'm just going to share my screen again briefly. So that is that when we do estimation, we try and use techniques that are collaborative and unanimous. And the reason for that is actually to protect the people who are making those estimates from blame. Okay. We don't want to be able to blame the people who make estimates when they are wrong, right? So you know, this is kind of a funny thing, because often estimation techniques ask individuals to estimate the things that they are sort of experts on. Okay, but that's, remember, that idea of expertise is actually already taken away when we say we want to do things fast and not accurate. It means that we don't need only experts, because we're getting rid of this idea. We're not making accurate estimates. So if we don't need the experts to make the estimates, but maybe we want them involved anyway for psychological reasons, or we think they might be helpful, then we have to set things up so that they are making their estimates in a collaborative fashion with other people, and ideally that the estimates are unanimous. So how does that relate? Well, when like if I'm the leader of an organization and I ask someone to estimate something about a topic that's complex, and they give me an estimate because they feel pressured to, 4 weeks or whatever. And then when things don't go right and it's taking longer than 4 weeks, especially if I'm trying to hold them accountable to that, which is best practice, then they start to fear the deadline.
right.
Fear does not lead to effective, creative, problem solving, innovative work. It actually leads to people narrowing their thinking to provide the minimum thing that's going to hopefully get them off the hook.
Right. Oh
Okay?
wow, yeah, that definitely makes sense.
And so, yeah, so there's this huge psychological safety problem, which actually leads to poor work, not just the psychological stress for people, but actually poor results because they don't have that ability to be in a creative state versus a fearful state. Now, admittedly, again, there's exceptions. Some people do really like that. Some people feel like they need deadlines to get stuff done, that even in creative environments, they need that. But it's not common. Most people actually suffer from that kind of environment. So again, this principle of doing things in a collaborative and hopefully unanimous way, it leads to choosing estimation techniques that are different than are often done in traditional environments. Because we have to shield individuals. We shouldn't be able to track back to say, oh, Sheriane estimated 4 weeks for this task, and uh-oh, Sheriane's in trouble, right? Instead, we say, oh, hey, Sheriane is part of a team, Mishkin's part of a team, David is part of a team, Strada is part of a team, Jerry is part of a team, Mark is part of a team, Keisha is part of a team. Those 6 or 7 people are going to get together and they're going to come up with estimates together in a way that we can't blame any one individual. There's this kind of psychological safety in numbers, right?
Yeah.
As long as we don't record the estimation sessions, right?
Right. Hopefully people don't do that.
Well, these days with Zoom, who knows, right?
It'll tell
But
you.
yeah, but hopefully not, right? Certainly we don't in our own company, and we don't do estimates very often anyway. But I don't know. Any thoughts or questions about that principle?
Oh, it definitely makes sense. I think too many times we hear the whole, oh, well, this person said X, Y, Z, therefore it's on them.
Right.
And then that person, I think it definitely makes sense because, yeah, it definitely makes sense in terms of like how they're working, because that is the truth. They are going to pick whatever solution, no matter what it is, just to be like, I don't want to get in trouble or lose my job or, you know, get demoted or whatever it is, just because I said I would deliver this and I can't because of, you know, whatever circumstance. And you see it all the time. And that's not to say that I hate deadlines or I think deadlines are a bad idea. I just think, like, I kind of agree with you. Like, it's more of like a general estimate of being like, it would be nice to possibly have it out here, but things, I mean, look at our world, things can go sideways really quickly. So let's just see, like, we can aim for it, but like, it's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and you know, of course, in a lot of organizations, then there's this question about accountability. Well, how do you keep people accountable? How do you know if they're doing a good job and
Right.
stuff like that? And the reality is that like a lot of that thinking is based on types of work that are kind of robotic, actually. Like, oh, someone's got to make, you know, 50 phone calls a day in the sales department, or you know, we have to do X, like these repetitive activities that don't require so much creativity. They don't require so much problem solving. So those kinds of simple or like even complicated things that are multiple steps, but they're predictable, certainly we can estimate for those things. We can sometimes set deadlines and do that. And so there is a category of work where, again, you might apply non-agile estimation and planning techniques. But if we're doing complex work, in a volatile or ambiguous or uncertain kind of situation, then actually agile estimation techniques are really applicable just in order to create that psychological safety and to have better results. It still doesn't answer the question about accountability though. And so the last thing I'll say about that is in an agile environment with complex problems, accountability is actually tough. I'm going to be just really honest about that. There is no magical solution for keeping people accountable other than the overall success of your work with your clients or your business or what have you. You know, there's no magic solution. Not every business succeeds. Not every project is going to deliver the kind of value that you hope for or expect. And so this actually encourages a much more experiment-driven kind of culture in an organization. And that's, I mean, this is outside of the topic of this conversation, but you know, agile estimation techniques are part of a more overall agile mindset, which includes constant experimentation to test ideas quickly, get fast feedback based on measurable results. And you're going to throw away a lot of experiments because they just don't work. So, yeah. Any other thoughts or comments, Sheriane?
Oh, yes. I think I did have one question about
Sure.
the experiments, because that definitely makes sense. And it's true, you will get fast feedback. And that means, like you said, a lot of experiments are going to get thrown out.
Yeah.
But does that mean over time, I'm guessing, like, for example, like a 10-year-old company that's, you know, continuing for like going on 20 years, et cetera, I'm going to guess that they want to get better at this and they want to have less waste.
Right. Yeah. Getting better at things and less waste. Yes, absolutely. And that's, you know, in many organizations, that's about going from the complex domain and converting things into the complicated domain. So you do the experiments to figure out what the solutions are. And then once you have discovered some good solutions, you implement them and you let them run in a way that is predictable. So I mean, this is so much about what the advantage of software development is, right? Developing the software in the first place is complex. But once you've delivered a great solution, the software is super cheap to run. It automates things or improves quality for things, or, you know, whatever it does, enables new benefits. And then it's there. It's there for as long as it can last, with, you know, accounting for, of course, changing environments and so on and so forth. But that's the goal of so much software development, is to take things out of the unknown complex domain and systematize them so that they're cheap and effective
Routine.
and efficient and routine. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So basically, it's kind of like once you establish the solution, it's pretty much good from there. And that's kind of the goal, you're saying. They just want to make sure like it works and it's good. And then once it's out, it's out.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Okay.
problem is that many organizations think they know the solution way too early, and they
Oh,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is very common, right? Hey, we know what we need, but when it comes to implementing the results of whatever the project or the team is working on, people discover, uh-oh. And you mentioned an important phrase here: fast feedback. So that's why, like, again, another part of the agile mindset. So by doing estimates fast, by doing things collaboratively, that also helps us with that fast feedback. So I'd like to go to the final piece of this, which is the third principle. I'm going to share my screen here. And that is that all estimates and plans are lies. Now, there's a small qualification here: in complex environments. And so again, we've been talking about this word complex, but I really want to just take a moment and focus on this word lies, because it's really important for us to consider the strength of that word. You know, most people want to be honest. Most people want to be truthful. Most people want to think of themselves as having integrity. But this comes back again to the psychological aspect of this. When we ask people to make estimates, we are asking them to lie to us. And that puts people in a really bad situation. So, like, if there's one thing that you get out of this discussion, it's that when we ask people to estimate things, we are asking them to lie to us. And so, yes, there is such a thing as white lies that sometimes you might consider acceptable. Maybe we can categorize estimation in that category. But please remember that if someone accuses you of being a liar, you are going to be offended, you are going to deny it. And yet, implicitly, that's what we're asking. So at the very least, when we're in an agile environment, we have to make sure that everyone knows this, that this is well known, and that people talk about how estimates and plans are lies, and that we accept that as instead a story. So we can say, we can rephrase it a little bit, that we are going to be telling a story about our future. And yes, it's not going to come true. Just like any fantasy, any science fiction, etc., whatever, kids thing, it's not going to come true. But that story has to be acknowledged as a story by everyone for it not to be putting people in a moral dilemma. And this is the thing that I'm really passionate about with agile estimation, is that if I'm working with leaders or executives in an organization, they need to understand the position they're putting people in when they ask for estimates. It's like, I don't think people think about this very much, but to me, it's morally untenable if you're not absolutely clear that you're asking people for a story about the future versus a commitment to the future, right? And
Yes.
so, yeah, please tell me a story. Imagine what might happen. Give me some estimates about what might happen. I know it's just a story. That's a very different way of approaching this idea of planning and estimation than saying, hey, we need to know when this is going to be done. How long? Right? Because that's a commitment. And that puts someone in a morally untenable position. They're going to have to lie to you. Anyway, I don't know. Thoughts or questions about that?
Yes, this is true. Oh my goodness. Like as I'm just hearing it, I'm like, wow, how many times have I seen this? Yes. But it also says something interestingly about like the culture or at least like the team dynamic of an organization, like when you ask for that kind of like deadline, because I mean, I hate to say this, but it's kind of showing like they don't really care about their people who are working for them and are working hard for them. And exactly as you said, like they're kind of sitting in their seats sweating, going, oh my gosh, now I have to come up with this lie to satisfy my bosses or XYZ's need, who's on the hierarchy ladder, who's ahead of me, and they don't want to lose their job. So they're like, so now what do I do? So I come up with this lie. Well, they're not thinking like out loud, like it's a lie,
Sure.
but they know subconsciously back there, they're like, none of this, or like 5% of this might be true, 95% is complete garbage.
Yeah.
They're putting it out there just to be like, okay, I'm going to try, I'm going to attempt it. And it's kind of sad because then when you think about it, their manager, whoever's ahead of them, is actually not even taking into account that this person's like literally doing their best. They're doing the most for this, and they're just trying, and
Yeah.
they can't. No one can predict the future, so I think it's actually kind of ridiculous too that companies would expect. Like, no one's a fortune teller. No one can do that.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind of asking your employees to play God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, of course, I do want to clarify, like, I know that leaders in organizations and managers in organizations asking for estimates aren't thinking, oh, I'm oppressing my,
Yeah.
staff and I'm
They're
making
just
them
trying to
all
get things
liars. Like they
going.
don't think of it that way. Um,
Yeah.
they're not deliberately trying to be bad to their staff,
No.
but what's happening is that there's this, like you said, there's this underlying kind of discomfort or awareness with what's going on. And like I really believe that truthfulness is the foundation of progress. Like you have to be truthful about your current state, you have to be truthful about your knowledge, you have to be truthful about your marketplace, you have to be truthful about who you are as an individual, who your staff are in terms of their capacities, their personalities, and so forth. And then you can
Right.
progress only if you know the truth.
Right.
But if you're
No, that makes
creating
sense.
fantasies, you actually don't know if you're progressing, right? Like if everyone's lying about everything, I'm
Right.
exaggerating here, but right, like,
No, I see what you mean though.
yeah. And I
Because
think
none of
that's,
in
yeah,
real time it doesn't count.
yeah,
And that's kind
exactly.
of the point.
Yeah, and I mean, even just for bean counters out there, people who care about metrics, if you don't know where you are, you can't measure if you're actually improving or not. And so, what's the most important measurements? It's about how well are you serving your clients, how well are you taking care of them, and again, if you don't know, then you can't make progress on measuring that. So internally, when we're talking about, for example, doing a project where you're asking people for estimates, what do you do? Like to apply all of these principles? Well, first of all, you start by, in your own mindset, acknowledging that the future is unpredictable and that just like you wouldn't want to be asked to commit to something 6 months down the road, your staff probably don't either. Um, and that the reasons for this are because, first of all, it's wasteful to think about that effort.
Right.
There's a problem with psychological safety when you ask individuals. And there's also a moral problem, which is that we're asking people to lie. So we have to shift not just our mindset, but also our behavior. And we choose ways of talking about planning and estimation that acknowledge that we're just telling stories and that it's just for us to feel comfortable in the short term. And we're going to have to change those stories as we move forward. Um, and really, there's so many agile estimation techniques that help with this. But even then, if your mindset is still focused on commitment and trying to predict the future, you're always going to be disappointed. That mindset is not compatible with an agile approach, and it is not compatible with transforming your business. I don't know. Sheriane, any final thoughts or questions?
This makes a lot of sense. This makes a lot of sense just because of like all the things that I've seen. I'm just thinking, I'm going through it in my head of like this times when I have seen this and I'm like, wow, no wonder all of that happened. Because I think like what I'm noticing about Agile too is like change is inevitable. You just got to get over it. And then the second thing too is like, I don't think actually commitment is wrong. It's about where you put the commitment. Because it's
Yeah,
good to be committed to your project as a team together. Like, we're all going to work on this. We're all going to take accountability together. We're all committed to it. That's good.
yeah,
But then when you have that one individual who's like at the top going, I'm committed to this one outcome and I don't care if it's possible or not. That's your problem, not mine. That's when you have a problem.
yeah, yeah,
So I see what you
absolutely.
mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. All right. Well, I think that wraps things up pretty much.
Yeah.
I'd love to encourage anyone who's watching this to connect with Sheriane or I on LinkedIn. It's easy to find me. I'm the only one on LinkedIn with my name. Sheriane, do you know if anyone else has your name?
No. pretty
Never
much in my
checked?
entire life, I don't think I've ever met another version of me.
Yeah, so you're the
No.
only one too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So
Very
thank
unique.
you to whoever sees this. Please connect with us. We are a referral-based business. So if you like this, let other people know about it, and consider coming to some of our training or bring us in to take me to your leader, speak with your leaders, or we do consulting and coaching to help you implement these kinds of amazing principles that really transform your business. Thanks so much.